What's good, Chiefs Kingdom, and welcome back to the Water Boys channel. As I have another probably cap casualty that KC might be interested in coming into this NFL 2022 free agency offseason. But before we dive into any of that, please be sure to subscribe to the channel and like this video, as I will keep the daily content rolling throughout the year, so you do not want to miss out on any of that. Without further ado, let's jump into James Bradberry. My free agent target today will be James Bradberry, and he's not even a free agent yet, but there's probably a good 80 to 90% chance that he could hit the market due to the New York Giants cap issues that they are dealing with this offseason. They are going to be $10 million over cap. That means they got to find ways to get under cap, and also they're trying to be big players as well, definitely with the new coach, new offensive scheme, new defensive scheme coming in. They're trying to rejuvenate that whole team, so there could be moves they need to make trying to redo that whole team, and James Bradberry can be one. If the Giants keep him, which highly unlikely, they could even restructure as well, but he has a $21 million cap hit this year, which is high for any cornerback in the league, let alone him himself. He is a great cornerback. He's a very underrated cornerback, and if we're going to talk about underrated, we got one of our own guys who's hitting the free agent market as well as Charvarius Ward. So the first thing I wanted to do was kind of compare the numbers. And I'm going to jump into Charvarius Ward first, because even as Chiefs fans and all Chiefs fans, we do appreciate what he's done, but I do think he's highly underrated. And I do think that he is going to be with a different team next year, just because I think his dollar sign will amount more to what the Chiefs are willing to pay him. And also, too, even on the stat ledger as well, I think with KC, he has had two really solid years this year and 2019 as well. They're both very similar, like 10 pass defense breakups. I think both the years he had 2 to 3 interceptions as well. High 40 to 50 tackle range as well. I don't know if he is a number one cornerback, which would make me hesitant, and even if I'm in the KC office as well, to sign him to a long-term deal. I think that's where KC is going to have to look very heavily as well, because everyone knows my number one target this offseason is going to be J.C. Jackson. But let's say we don't find the way to get cap space, or we're not heavy players for him whatsoever. I think James Bradberry is an upgrade over Charvarius Ward and KC. They only got 2 cornerbacks, well 3 if you consider the practice squad, going into 2022 next year that will be on this roster. We got L'Jarius Sneed, who's coming into his own. You got Rashad Fenton, who he has shown things where he can be a good player and a starter in this defense as well. And then you got DiCaprio Bootle, who is a special teams guy right now, practice squad player as well. He did get to see the field late in the season, but we'll have to see how that, moves on going into 2022. But the fact that going into 2022 and you're that depleted into the cornerback position, even if they did have a Charvarius Ward, it's something they need to look to in this free agency and in draft as well. And that's where I think James Bradberry, if the Giants do happen to cut him, or if we make a play trade-wise, which I'll jump into first, if the Chiefs should make a play trade-wise. And that's going to be very interesting, because at a $21 million hit, that means if KC was to trade, there's dead money in it, so the Giants would still, I want to say, have 9 to 10 or something like that. So if he comes to KC will be spending $13 million, which for cornerback his caliber is actually really well too. And if you think about it, that's going to be Charvarius Ward's market as well. It's between a $10 to $13 million range, and if you can get a starting caliber cornerback who can perform better than Charvarius Ward at the same price, I'd go all over it, and I'd go probably around a 4th round pick, just because he did have kind of an off year this year, but even his off year was better than Charvarius Ward's year as well. We just talked about Charvarius Ward had 10 breakups. James Bradberry had 17. That when the ball comes to him, he makes sure the receiver doesn't catch it, and he had 4 interceptions. Now, this was the year where he did allow the most touchdowns, but again, that could just be the Giants' offense scheme-wise as well on defense. I don't follow the Giants whatsoever, so I don't know what could have went through it. I will watch more tape on James Bradberry. I watched brief highlights just to compare him and Charvarius Ward, and he is a good player. He's a good tackler as well, and I just have to think with how bad the Giants' offense was, and they had a lot of turnovers, that when you put a defense in bad position, which KC fans know all too much about as well, when we saw earlier in the season, Mahomes threw a lot of interception, fumble balls. Other teams were in good territory, and they scored right away. Could have been the same thing with the Giants. I don't know too much about it, but also too with James Bradberry, just looking down the numbers, and I'll have the stats up as well, he's very consistent. Interception totals may not be high, they may be around like 4, 5, 6 range, but the pass defense as well, he's always 10 plus. He always knows how to knock the ball away. Is something you want to see because you don't want the receiver catching the ball, and I like that he's all over him as a defender. And it's just he's very quiet of a defender. You hear him on and off, but you never hear him mentioned in the top cornerbacks, and I believe that's what he can be. He's getting up there in the age, but he's only 28, unlike Charvarius Ward. Charvarius Ward's 25, so he's got a lot of room for growth. But James Bradberry, just the type of player he is right now, and all the redoing KC has to do on defense, because we don't know if a Tyrann Mathieu's coming back. It looks like Frank Clark's out the door. They're going to be changing a lot of things, kind of like they did when they went on their first Super Bowl run, when they brought in a Frank Clark, when they brought in a Honey Badger. They want a new attitude on this defense again to make sure they can make that Super Bowl run. That's why I wouldn't be surprised if, even though I'm not going to like it, if Tyrann Mathieu is out the door or Frank Clark is out the door, because it is time for change and they want to make sure they're not in their same rut. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't. They might make an offer, but it might not be nothing crazy for Charvarius Ward, just so they can make a play on other guys like a J.C. Jackson or if a James Bradberry hits the market. And I think in this type of scheme as well, James Bradberry fits it. He plays good in man, so he plays good in anything, but Spagnuolo likes those big cornerbacks, and that's exactly what he is. He's 6'1", over 200 pounds, and that fits the mold of what Spagnuolo likes, and I think that fits very well. And then you can pair him with a L'Jarius Sneed, Rashad Fenton, mold into his own, try to go after maybe a mid-tier dollar-sign cornerback or even in the draft as well. I think it fits perfectly. Honestly, though, he falls. Again, like I said, this offseason, these videos are going to keep changing. They're going to keep updating on people who I want. Like I said, my number one guy is J.C. Jackson. I just don't think no one touches him out there, like on the cornerback market. And I was going through his numbers just to try to compare him with James Bradberry, and they don't relate whatsoever. I mean, J.C. Jackson, almost in the 20 in pass defense. Of course, we know his interception total is 8, but this isn't even his first year doing that too. He puts consistent numbers out there, and that he's going to be my number one target. But I think even as much as this keeps shifting, James Bradberry should be a target KC is looking after. And I know the cap casualty cuts came in for the Giants, and there was rumor places for James Bradberry to go. KC wasn't one of them, but in my hindsight view, I think they should be, because like I said, it's a whole remodel. I think he fits the defense very well. I think Charvarius Ward's going to walk, and it's just going to be interesting to see. Like, this is going to be all remodeled, and I think he's the better cornerback and better fit. But my question for the day will be, who do you prefer, Chiefs Kingdom? Would you prefer a guy like James Bradberry? He's got all the stats. He's very underrated. He is a little older. Or would you prefer Charvarius Ward? He's very underappreciated, like I said as well. But also, too, we watch him day in and day out. And we are very critical of him and the mistakes he has made. But this was a big bounce back year for him. And like I said, he had won it back in 2019. But it's just what Charvarius Ward do you get? And that's another thing that concerns me much as well. Did he just do really good because it's contract year? Like we said, a lot of players ball out when it's contract year. So it's going to be interesting. But I'm going to slide towards James Bradberry just because if they're both going to cost around the same, which they might definitely if we trade for James Bradberry, I'm going to put my money towards him. But the comments are open. Let me know how you feel. James Bradberry, Charvarius Ward. I'm going to close it there, but before I do, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like this video. I'm going to give you that daily content with anything Kansas City Chief related, so you do not want to miss out on it. That's right, subscribe, like this video. I am checking out. You guys take care.